And then we've arrived to the second speaker on the expert stage here. As I've mentioned before, it's going to be about co-foundership. Co-foundership, how this works, how to find them, the struggles this can maybe bring up. Please give a big round of applause for the next speaker, David Dessers, co-founder at Cresco Law.
Start. Hello, thank you all for being present here. I'm David. I'm my founder myself of a law firm called Cresco, and we work on a daily basis with founders of primarily technology companies. Maybe the first question to answer is, if you set up a new business, should you have a co-founder? And we very rarely see founders, solo founders that are able to manage a company completely on their own in all business domains. So, and you certainly think it's very advisable to find co-founders to run your business. We've counseled hundreds of founders in their businesses, and I think if you want to make it a success, there's several aspects you need to think of prior to setting up the business, because when people come to us and ask us, we're going to set up a business and collaborate together, the first thing we do is to send them back home with homework to think about certain matters, because setting up a business is very exciting. And you typically have people coming over and say, hey, we're good friends, we're going to set up something together. Yeah, but have you made any arrangements amongst yourselves? Well, the answer is no, we don't need that, we're good friends. If you then ask the follow-up question to a person and say, yeah, but if your co-founder actually starts the business with you and leaves the next day, can he remain a founder? Can he keep the equity in his company? And the answer invariably, of course, is no. Of course, that person cannot remain in the business. So one of the first aspects you need to think of very well is, A, how do you divide the equity, the shares of the company that you're founding? And is it clear that there is a sufficient link between being a founder of the business and being professionally active in the company? And one of the things that you cannot certainly put in a mathematical formula is, what is the dedication? So talking, making sure that people are aligned and have the same point of view on where to go with the business, how to grow it, how to manage it, how to look for financing, are of crucial importance. And we see that a lot of mistakes are made by founders. Very often known founders, once they have sold their business, the second time around they do it, of course, completely different to set up the business. Second, how do you make decisions among founders? That's also something that you really need to clarify very well upfront amongst founders. Do you have one prime founder who owns the majority of the business and permits others to join him as well, or her as well? In general, splitting the equity equally among founders is not a very good idea. You need to have a dominant founder in a business very often who takes the prime role. And to really, I cannot stress it enough, talk long and hard about how they see themselves, not 1 year from now, but 5, 10 years from now. Certainly if you co-found a business with someone who has come from a big corporate and has the idea, okay, we'll see whether we can set up a business together, you need to make sure that the person is completely motivated, because being a founder, certainly if you have no funding available up front and you have to bootstrap your business, is hard. It's very difficult. You don't get a salary for half a year, a year and a half, and not all people are cut out to do that, to set up a business like that. And you need to have the mechanisms in place to make sure that if there is an issue among founders, you can correct it and you can ensure that one founder leaves the business. Also, when you raise funding with investors, they will all ask whether founder arrangements are in place in a business, and if they're not already put in place, they will impose something on you that you probably are not going to like. I think also a very important aspect is what the long-term view is on exit. You know, how do you want to finance the business? How many rounds do you want to do? How fast do you want to exit? Because very often there's a divergence of opinion on how fast people want to exit, and the first bid that is on the table to buy the business, some founders may immediately react, okay, fine, you know, we don't want to keep on building the company further, we want to sell, whereas others might not want to sell, and having their very clear alignment between the parties on how long you want to do this together is of crucial importance. And maybe one last thing before we pass over to the questions, because that will make it more tangible, is you might not be the same, you might not be the right person for every phase of the company. And what you see is that the most successful entrepreneurs, I mean, if you're in the tech sector, you have Showpad, two founders we've worked with a lot in the past. They found a business, they grow it up to a certain level. But if you run a company which has 10 people, or one of 50, 100, 1,000, it's a completely different ball game. And there's very few founders that are actually capable of assuming the role. You can be a founder of a 10-person company, you know everybody, your friends, and you work together, versus having to really create a management structure, manage the company going forward, and run a company which has 1,000 employees. And that's not a given for everybody, and that's something that you as a founder have to be aware of, and that when the time comes to pass on the baton and say, okay, there may be someone else better than me to run this company going forward, you have to be prepared to step down and step back and take up a different role in the company. So that is in a nutshell what I wanted to say. So if you...
Perfect. Thank you very much, David. Let's sit down for some more questions. A really interesting topic for me, because they've always said to me, well, if you start a business, don't do it with friends. But I think that's something really hard, since the friends are the ones you have in your network, and then you should actually find co-founders not in your network. How do you find these people?
Well, I think what I certainly think is setting up a business with family. That's a bad idea. I have not often seen that work, and especially when things go wrong and people have dedicated their career and money to the business. If these things go sour, it really can destroy relationships between family members, and that's certainly something that you have to avoid. And setting something up with friends, I've had the experience myself. You know, I set up Cresco. I was a partner in a previous law firm, and I became really good friends with some people. Things didn't work out. And the fact that we were such close friends certainly did not help to really be transparent and honest. Like, it's difficult, you know, difficult to tell to someone, you know, you do this right or wrong, and you're maybe not the right person to bring the company forward to the next level. And it really takes a lot of effort to really be honest and transparent to each other. And the thing we always say, talk, as long as, I mean, as much as is needed. And we've had people that we guide, you know, we have a checklist on what you have to think of as founders, and that people, when discussing these matters, and they were friends, really decided that it was not for them, and that they might not be friends after having set up the business. And certainly this, I mean, what is the long-term objective? And what is the level of dedication? Because you have a lot of things like splitting the pie, equity models, giving points, and how do you divide things, and how do you redivide things. I'm very skeptical about that actually working. I mean, human relationships you cannot put in a mathematical formula. And I've always found that the level of dedication and effort is really key in everything. And if you have 4 founders and 3 work super hard, the 4th one does little or less, and they have equal percentages, you do it 1 year, and the 2nd year you're like, hey, you know, I mean, come on, this is not the way we're going to build a business. But having a mix of friends and non-friends, but how you find them, yeah, that, I don't know.
maybe on events like this.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Then maybe, David, what are the most common challenges then between co-founders? Is it dedication, as you said, or is it money?
Well, I think it is two things. One is dedication and making sure everybody works as hard, because it is really hard work to really set up a business from scratch. And I think the second one that I see is that again, this honesty and being able to tell to the other person that he might not be the right person to bring the company to the next level. You set up the business, and maybe you graduate out of university, or you have already had a job and you're 4 people, and they say, okay, one guy is or girl is CEO, the other one does finance, technology, marketing, sales. And that may be good to start the business, but once you have to scale it, you might not have the skills, and certainly educate yourself, keep learning to learn the skills. And I think the previous speaker said that's also very important. Look for mentors, because certain things you may not be able to say to your co-founders, and if you have someone to talk to, I have someone like that for myself. There's things that I do not discuss with my partners or founders or co-founders, and I say, hey, I'm struggling with this. How would you deal with this? Someone who you respect, who often is older and has done many things. And I've seen certainly relationships collapse over, especially the last aspect, where you have one founder who does not see that he is not the right person for the role. Very often investors have stepped in, they see that too, and then either they voluntarily agree, okay, I step back because I'm not the right person, or it is involuntary, and that then really has a tendency to break relationships, which is a shame, because you've spent several years together building something, and it's over. So.
And David, maybe as a founder yourself, do you have some personal advice or best practices to make this work, the co-foundership?
Well, I think, I do this as a profession, advising. A part of my profession is advising founders on how to structure your business. And certainly in my current firm and the previous one, all the advice I've given, I have not followed myself. It's very typical. And by nature, for example, I'm conflict avoidant as a person. It fits me in my profession and the deals I have to structure. That is a characteristic that works, but I really have to force myself when I'm unhappy about something to really say, hey, I'm not happy about this. And I think it's also a question of how you formulate it. I think one book is really advisable. I forgot the author, but there's a book about non-violent communication. How do you bring things? Instead of saying, I don't like this or that about you, you'd rather ask the question, but why do you behave like this? It is really a question of framing the question. And for me, it is a continuous struggle to really, if I'm happy, all fine. If I'm not happy, to really sit together and say, look, this is not going okay. We have to modify this. And again, this honesty, transparency, and being friendly, and do not do it in an aggressive manner.
And at Cresco then, how many founders were you?
Well, we originally we were 3 founders. One left because his business just changed, and the other, well, that was not a friendly split, and that had to do with a variety of aspects of. Cannot go into detail, but it was a good lesson. And now we are 3 partners. We are 25 people, more or less. One person is on the partner track. A law firm is also very specific, because you have a pyramid. You start as junior, you become associate, and then the end goal for some is to become partner. And you have the expression, there can be only one, or there can be only few. So if you have several people competing for the same top position and you promote one, well, then you will run the risk of other good people leaving.
And do you then always make sure that the team of founders is complementary?
Well, yes, in the sense, yes and no, in the sense that we have several practice areas, basically corporate and M&A, technology and dispute resolution, and we have one partner per practice group, basically. But if we would be bigger or become bigger, then of course you will have a promotion within corporate. But certainly I think most people here would start more of an innovative tech company. You really need complementary skills on board. Someone who has more savvy for management, someone else who has the technology angle, having someone who's good at organization, finance. That's also super important because, all these aspects. Except if you have a lot of money from home, you won the lottery, or you founded a business, you sold it, and you have an enormous amount of money, so you can fund everything yourself. Very often that is not the case. So you will have to raise funding externally, and it's a totally different ballgame once you have raised money. Then you have to professionalize very fast. Investors, they have limited patience, so it's their money on the line, and the money that investors in those funds have given to them to invest. And if you don't perform, and certainly in the current market circumstances, we went through a couple of years of crazy fundraisings, crazy valuations, well, that time is over. And for the unforeseeable future.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, David, for your time, for being that open. Are you staying at the Cresco booth tonight?
Yeah.
All right. So for all the people, if you have any more questions to David or on co-foundership, you can find David tonight at the Cresco booth. Please give a round of applause. Thank you very much, David.